I'm Dave Baker.
And I'm Andrew Price.
Welcome to Deep Cuts, the podcast where we pick a topic and walk you through the ins and outs and the nitty gritty so you can appear like an interesting and idiosyncratic person at your next forced social function. Today's topic is...
the sex raft experiment.
What is the sex raft experiment? Well, in the extremely insane pantheon of insane 1970s science experiments, right next to dolphin handjobs and psychic spoon bending, there lies one forgotten maritime debacle more Love Island than thesis. It was called the Acali Experiment, but history remembers it better as the sex raft.
Act 1. A man, a plan, an extremely horny agenda.
I love this already.
Santiago Genoves was not your average academic. Born in Spain but raised in Mexico after fleeing Franco's regime, he was a trained anthropologist with a history of raft-based experiments. Those were apparently a thing back in the 70s, with Genoves having been a part of Thor Heyerdahl's Ra 1 and 2 project. This was Genoves working with other sailors, shipbuilders, and scientists to replicate taking a reed-built boat across the Atlantic. Thor's main point, though, wasn't just proving the boats could make the trek, but the trek itself brought the crew together. That's an incredibly noble idea. There is absolutely something to be said about humanity working best when it's with purpose. This is something you see touched upon in fiction like Alan Moore's Watchmen or even Bill Pullman's famous ID4 speech. People do often work better when working for a singular idea or against a common enemy. Real quick before we move on, we got our boy Santiago Genoves here. And we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but you know, this is him on the titular sex raft, which we'll get to what that is. We'll reveal the secrets of the sex raft.
I wonder what a sex raft
We'll demystify the unknowable truth of the sex raft soon.
Yeah.
But this is him on it. You know, shirtless, 70'd up.
Can you imagine if
having that gaunt dad bod?
Could you imagine if Shane Carruth's A Modern Ocean got made, but it looked like this?
And it was just called Sex Raft?
And it was called Sex Raft?
I mean, it would have gotten made. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. It would have gotten made.
We would have that movie if it was called Sex Raft. But yeah, he looks like a 70s dude.
Santiago looks like if Chris Christopherson was real horned up.
Yeah.
Santiago looks like the type of guy who sees a boat and goes, "What if we fucked on that?"
Yeah, he was the OG I'm on a boat guy. He walked so that the lonely island could run. But when humanity is adrift, foreboding pun absolutely intended, the disparate ideas can not only directly conflict with one another, but they can set everyone 2 steps back. By the early 1970s, Genoves was already known in academic circles for his unconventional ideas about conflict, evolution, and the dark corners of human nature. Santiago became obsessed with the broader question: why do humans fight? Where does violence come from? Can it be predicted, prevented, or at least provoked in a laboratory? This wasn't some detached academic inquiry. For Santiago, the answers had to come from the body, from power, from sex. He believed that violence, particularly male violence, was rooted in competition for mates. In other words, wars were just glorified brawls over who gets to have sex with whom. He wasn't the first to think that way. Freud had been saying this for decades, but Santiago wanted to test it empirically, physically, on the ocean for some reason, in a raft. So he pitched his plan. Build a small raft, fill it with attractive, ethnically diverse strangers, remove privacy, strip down social roles, and invert power dynamics by putting women in charge. The raft would depart from Las Palmas, Spain, and end up in Cozumel, Mexico. He would monitor them for signs of aggression, competition, and lust. If things got too boring, he'd inject a little tension by selectively praising some crew members over others or implying favoritism. He even planned to create confessionals where participants could air grievances anonymously, then read those grievances aloud to the group. Subtlety was not Santiago's strong suit. As I'm reading this, and I'm not joking, like this is not a joke, this is like the template for reality television.
Totally it is. That's what I was just thinking. Even the idea of pitting people against each other, the idea of trying to stoke as much eroticism and conflict as possible, the idea that you would accept statements in what is perceived as confidence and then leak that information selectively or broadly. Like, it just is reality TV.
Yeah, it's like shocking how similar it is. Like the confessional booths, like setting up little like traps to try to get conflict going, to the point where it's almost like, was there some like dude in the 1980s or whatever that like learned about this and then like created like the first reality TV show? Like he was weirdly inspired by the story or something like that. And it's also interesting because, you know, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves because it's kind of getting into spoiler territory to even talk about this. But as we'll kind of find out, there was maybe some ulterior motives that were a little bit more about,
which is again right in line with fucking reality TV. Like everything involved in that. Like I remember one of my friends was, I think he still is, frankly, but I haven't talked to him in a minute, was dating a reality TV show producer, and we were all on a trip together, and she had said some stuff that I had kind of was a little eyebrow raising. And then at one point in the trip, she said, well, you know, my job is lying to people, right? And it clicked. And I was like, oh, you're not a good person. Oh.
Yeah. They know.
Yeah, sure. But it's weird to meet someone that you're trying to be like extending an olive branch to. Here, come be a part of our social circle. This is our friend who's, you know, bringing you in, and we're all going to be nice. And the assumption is because we like our friend and we think he's a good person that he's going to choose someone to be a partner with that is a good person. And then the person just freely is like, oh no, I'm terrible.
But then it turns out he's just like, let me honk him.
Yeah, and then we all have to kind of be like, maybe don't honk him.
Yeah, maybe it's not worth it. Maybe your soul isn't worth the honks.
Yeah, maybe honking should be a secondary priority.
Yeah. Honk the brain first.
Honk the brain first.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, there's... but in a very similar fashion, I think that they've completely moved on from even having this veneer. But I think back in the day, particularly in the 90s, like with the advent of reality television, I think, you know, as people, they were trying to normalize it to people because, you know, back in the early 90s and stuff with the Real World and some of those things, like, I'm assuming they had to really get people on board with that of like, hey, you know how like you like TV shows where people have put all this time and effort into crafting stories and there's like these acting performances? How about you just watch people sitting there saying shit? And, you know, a lot of people were probably just like, why would I want to do that? And then over time, they're like, wait a minute, that's all I want to do. But I'm assuming initially they kind of had to sell people on the concept. And so in the early days of reality television, it was presented a lot more like it was like a social experiment.
Yeah, literally the Real World, right? Like, what happens when 10 strangers are forced to live in one house and shit gets real?
Yeah, so it's like framed as a almost academic anthropological experiment that is actually in reality about voyeurism and titillation.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what this is, as we're going to find out.
Yeah.
Other than the reality TV, the obvious comparison here is something like The Blair Witch Project, which was one of the most profitable movies of all time and a trailblazer amongst genre and independent filmmaking, yada, yada, yada. It's also a movie where its two co-directors tortured 3 young actors in the woods while depriving them of sleep and food. But are the ends justified by the means? While the end result for The Blair Witch Project was a movie, what exactly did Santiago expect the end of this very real-life experiment to be? He named the experiment the Peace Project, but make no mistake, this was a war he wanted to happen. A war of libido and resentment.
More like a piece of ass project, you know what I'm saying?
We're getting into it, but that's 100% what it was.
We're getting into it.
He expected to watch a slow motion implosion, a kind of Lord of the Flies for the age of Aquarius. But what he got was far weirder, and as the days wore on, it became clear that the real unstable element wasn't male aggression or sexual frustration, it was Santiago himself. He would inevitably become the enemy they united against. The irony is that the man who wanted to study conflict became its sole producer. When the Raft didn't turn into a sex-fueled madhouse, he tried to make it one. When no one fought, he accused them of hiding their rage. When the women asserted leadership, calmly and competently, he was disappointed. It turns out you can give people sun, sea, and zero privacy, but you can't force them to hate each other on schedule. Here we have just more of these people hanging out on the sex raft.
That is a fucking raft.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we'll start to go into the logistics of it, but just to make it clear for the listener, sex raft is somewhat of a comedic overstatement of what this was. It was a boat, but it was a very small boat, and sort of by design, the way that this experiment was set up by Santiago, it was designed where nobody had any privacy. There's no like rooms, there's no little cot that you can pull a curtain over or whatever. Everybody just had to live and sleep and coexist in like a wide open space, to the point where, I mean, I'm sure I'm just going to repeat what we're going to say in a little bit, but they had to like shit off the side of the boat with people watching. So imagine if you just had to go to the bathroom with everybody just sitting there, like watching you.
That's no different than what you and I do.
Yeah, but we choose to do that.
Yeah, it's true. And we have a gentleman's agreement where I'm like, all right, avert your eyes, and then you usually avert your eyes.
Yeah, we have a gentleman's agreement where you say, all right, avert your eyes, and then I say, all right, revert your eyes.
You're the opposite of Tyler Durden.
I'm the opposite. Well, I was going to say I'm the opposite of pee shy. I actually can't shit unless somebody's watching me.
Someone's watching you. That's why you have so many children, just because you want some form of...
Yeah, I literally, it's a logistical thing.
Yeah.
I have to have coverage at all hours of the day. Because there could be a time, at 4 o'clock in the morning when I have to take a huge shit. And it's like, all right, you're on shift.
Yeah. Your fucking 2-year-old.
My 8-year-old son has the midnight to 4 a.m. shift. The raft itself, christened Acali, was as much a character in the story as its passengers. It was 12 meters long, flat-bottomed, with a central shack for basic shelter and little else. There were no private rooms, just a shared sleeping space and thin curtains and bunk-style hammocks. The bathroom, a hole in the floor at the rear of the raft, open to the ocean. The shower, a bucket. Every inch of the design seemed calibrated to frustrate, annoy, and provoke. It was the anti-carnival cruise. And this is a bigger picture of the sex raft.
It looks like
a fucking Waterworld ship.
Yeah, it looks like something somebody cobbled together in their garage and then put on a, trailer and drove to the ocean.
Yeah, this looks like Kevin Costner is drinking his pee.
No shit. Yeah, the Mariner, he's out here.
When you look at Raw 1 and Raw 2, they're pretty gorgeous bits of shipmaking. But Santiago's true genius came in casting. He didn't just want diversity in terms of gender and race, he wanted psychological friction. The 11 crew members were handpicked from over 1,000 applicants, chosen not just from their looks, but from their backgrounds, personalities, and likelihood to trigger each other. There was Mary Gidley, a hard-nosed American social worker who later said she joined the experiment to escape a boring job. There was Edna Reves, a 30-year-old Israeli doctor. There was Jose Maria, a charming priest from the Canary Islands. The captain, Maria Bornstam, was a Swedish sailor and the only person with actual maritime experience. And then there was Santiago, the self-appointed observer, who placed himself in the middle of the raft and tried to remain objective despite being both bossy and creepily invested. The gender dynamics were flipped intentionally. Santiago declared that all leadership roles would go to women. Men would be relegated to maintenance and physical tasks, scrubbing, hoisting, repairing. The goal was to test how power affects group dynamics when social norms are reversed. But the way it played out was a little more grounded. People just did what needed doing, regardless of titles. That's like a very particular, level of progressivism for the 1970s, which, the 1970s was this time of, major leaps in social progressivism. But, by today's standards, it was all, not particularly progressive, where it's we're going to do something progressive on this ship. the women are gonna do the jobs, but like, and it's like has like the veneer of like, we're, you know, forward thinking, you know, liberal progressives, but in reality it's just like, wouldn't it be funny if the women did the jobs? It's almost like a sitcom scenario from the 1950s. Of like, oh, it's hilarious that Lucy is in this factory eating all this chocolate. What Santiago didn't expect was emotional maturity. The group treated each other with empathy and patience. They resolved minor conflicts through conversation. The women, instead of becoming petty tyrants or sexual aggressors as Santiago seemingly hoped, led with competence and calm. Even when things got boring or uncomfortable, the crew relied on humor and shared responsibility.
This also just, it underscores a male perspective on existence in such a strange way, where it's like, well, if you have a job, obviously you're gonna have uncontrollable thoughts on fucking every one of your employees. I mean it like, goes without saying.
What? It goes without saying that this entire thing is just like projection.
It's such a strange, because there's a version of this that I could see as something that we're going to find people with specific sets of interests. Like, okay, we're going to find a bunch of people who have foot fetishes, put them on this boat, and no one's allowed to wear shoes. Okay, maybe that does something to somebody. I don't know, you know? Like, okay.
Yeah, but unless you're a total maniac, like, you have self-control.
Theoretically,
like, just because you have a foot fetish doesn't mean that if you see a foot, you're just going to whip out your dick and start jerking off.
Well, speak for yourself.
I knew you were gonna say that.
No, but like specifically like this, like it feels like this guy worked at a Trader Joe's once and was like, I want to fuck all of my employees. You know what I mean?
That's absolutely what it is.
It's so weird.
It was like a time. I mean, you know, hearkening back to the Dolphin House experiment. It was a time in the 1970s when this particular strand of social experimentation became very popular, and the government was funding a lot of weird experiments. Independent researchers were doing a lot of weird experiments. You know, there was a I forget her name, maybe you know it, but there was an artist who famously did this social experiment where she basically went into a room and she allowed 100 men into the room, and basically like the premise, the concept of it was like, you can do whatever you want with me. And then there was like a table with like knives and different implements or whatever, and it was like supposed to be the social experiment of like, if you give 100 men like unfettered access to your body and tell them that they can do whatever they want with it, what will happen? Will they, you know, respect you, your autonomy?
Will they assault you?
Yeah, and like there was a lot of stuff like that happening. The actual like effectiveness or whether or not we extrapolated any useful information about any of these things is dubious. But a lot of people were doing these things. I think like many of those things that happened, there was like a different actual goal, which was like, I'm going to say that I'm doing this experiment because, you know, for the sake of science and anthropology, but in reality, I just want to have sex with a bunch of hot women.
Yeah.
But like pretend,
or be the center of attention.
But pretend like it's some noble experiment in sociology or whatever.
Yeah. It feels very similar to certain corners of the internet who they kind of like adopt either anti-fascist or anti-authoritarian language to describe things that have nothing to do with fascism, or just as a means of being like, do we agree on some political stuff and want to fuck? It's like, well, not everything is fascist. Like, I agree, we have a huge problem in the country right now. Yes, there are fascists in power, 100%. But being like, we're dismantling the fascism, the monago fascist state as like a progressive polyamory thing. I don't know about that one.
The man wearing an I'm a feminist of it all.
100%, yeah. And I have no problem with polyamory. I just think it's funny how people use these specific subcultures or newly blossoming ideology that is fighting to be seen as societally acceptable as a means of doing the same types of weird, oppressive, shitty behavior that used to be done, but now, because there's a term, people can be like, oh, well, it's okay if you're not treating me with respect because you've got a term backing it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the thing from the Chris Hansen episode, the thing we talked about with Onision, where he had this partner who is a trans man, but at the time publicly identified as a woman, and then he was basically like, oh, you know, I'm a feminist, so like I want to support my girlfriend, so I want her to be able to like have relationships with women. But the whole thing was just a thinly veiled excuse for him to want to have a threesome with two women. Like, but he was like pretending like it was because he was like this progressive feminist that was just like not trying to control his girlfriend. But he just wanted to watch girls make out, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's all of this stuff is so mercurial and troubling when, I don't know, maybe it's not troubling. Maybe it's people trying to sort it out, but I don't fucking know. It just feels like there's a lot of people who are trying to sort it out and going through the motions of figuring themselves out in a genuine and emotionally complex way, and then there's an equal number of people who are trying to use the same ideologies to like mass get their rocks off in ways that are not cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the simple long and short of it is global connectivity of the internet, and particularly social media, has amplified the bad faith actor problem times 100 to the point where it almost completely infects every aspect of society in an untenable way.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of can't escape from the fact that like half of the people in any given movement or subculture are actually doing something different that's not the spirit of what the movement is.
Yep.
Despite this giving him documentable and fascinating results, Santiago, however, was not pleased. He began trying to provoke them. He'd hold up anonymous comments from the confession box and read them aloud, hoping to stir paranoia. He'd subtly flirt with certain women, then grow cold when they didn't reciprocate. At one point, he accused the group of conspiring against him because they all refused to turn on each other like he'd planned. He had engineered a floating time bomb. Instead, he built a raft of friends who slowly began to see him as the problem. And they were right.
You love it. You love it when stories like this happen, where it's the exact opposite of what we were just talking about, where everyone sees through the code of the Matrix, they see through the ruse, and they're like, I feel like maybe you suck?
Yeah, well, I mean, number one, it's just an example of the fact that when you actually get people together in reality in a real room, they're a lot smarter than the crowd mentality of people brought together by algorithms,
right?
And acting in bad faith because they're anonymous behind a computer screen or whatever.
Yeah.
But also, yes, you absolutely do love to see it. You love to see. I mean, this is the power fantasy of every shitty grifter person you've ever heard of, that you just are like sitting there being like, how do people like this guy?
Like, this totally is what would have happened to John McAfee. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, after he sold the company, McAfee antivirus or whatever, made a bunch of money, and literally, like, was it Colorado? He tried to start a cult. We did a whole episode about this.
It was either Colorado or Utah, I forget. But yes, he tried. He had like a retreat where he tried to start like a little cult that was presented like it was like a wellness retreat thing, but it was just really a cult.
It was super transparently a cult, and everyone was just like, "No, I don't think so." Even before it got off the ground, and that's really funny to me. But equally as funny to me is the idea that he had been somewhat successful, and then everyone just kind of went, I feel like you suck.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's John McAfee, but also any of these people, like Andrew Tate, it would be the same way. Mm-hmm. These people are able to grow influence through the opaqueness of a curated life on social media. Like, you can present yourself as however you want. You can manipulate the narrative. You can say a different thing. You can say one thing, and then if you realize people don't like it, you can A/B test it and say a different thing. And it doesn't really matter if you're contradicting yourself, because nobody cares about something you said on a video 5 years ago, because the forward thrust of a social media world just invalidates anything that didn't happen longer than like 3 days ago.
Yeah.
So you can curate a version of yourself that at least some segment of society is going to worship as some kind of god, but get that person into a room with all of that opaqueness removed, where they have to actually be real and emotional and raw and vulnerable, and they can't hide their flaws behind the opaqueness of social media and videos where they present themselves in certain ways and they shoot themselves from different angles that they choose, and everybody's going to hate that person. No, there's no question about it. Like, this guy sucks.
I can't
if you get people into a room with this person, they will grow to hate him because he fucking sucks.
I can't believe that people like Andrew Tate. Like, it's just insane to me. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, because he represents, like, he's kind of a funky looking guy who is not particularly charismatic, but nonetheless is rich and has all these women crawling all over him. Once again, at least the way he presents himself.
I was gonna say, but does he though? I don't know.
And so you see, it's like we live in an age where specifically people who are uncharismatic losers are popular, because it's just a bunch of people who are just like, I'm a fucking uncharismatic loser, and none of these girls will talk to me, and everybody hates me. And this guy is like, this guy shows that, like, even I could be rich and powerful and women would want to fuck me. So, like, people become popular specifically because they suck.
It's so weird.
Put yourself into a room with that person where you actually have to grapple with them on a personal level, and you will hate them no matter who you are.
Yeah.
Santiago came prepared for chaos. He brought questionnaires, notebooks, cameras, audio recorders. He had a checklist of variables he was going to track: who flirted with who, how often people fought, who stopped working first, how quickly society crumbled. In his mind, the Raft would become a petri dish of suppressed desires and unchecked aggression. He imagined himself like a scientific voyeur meets therapist, cataloging emotional meltdowns from a safe observational distance. But something funny happened. Nothing. The crew got along. Not in a utopian Starfleet kind of way, but in a real human, we're stuck on a boat, so let's not make it worse kind of way. They worked together. They established routines. They rotated tasks like cooking, cleaning, and navigating. They had philosophical conversations, read books, and took in the stunning beauty of open water. They sunbathed topless, which Santiago hoped meant something, but really just meant it was hot. Shared meals and learned each other's languages. Imagine that day when the first person popped off their shirt and he's like, it's coming together.
It's happening.
It's happening.
It's happening. And then nothing.
And then
happened.
just nothing came of it, and he's just like, he's like, I could have been somebody. I could have been a contender.
Yeah.
I could have fucked these hot girls. There were no orgies, no screaming matches, no soap opera betrayals, just 11 people floating across the Atlantic Ocean, relaxing. Which is also just another kind of rebuke of this reality television dynamic where, like, this is so cool specifically because it ended up being boring.
Yeah.
But, like, if this happened on a reality TV show,
they would make it.
The reality TV show would have no ratings. People would think it was stupid. They'd be like, this sucks, not watching the show.
It just wouldn't have been this. The producers would have stepped in and they would have artificially inflated the situation and injected drama into it. They would have been like, so-and-so says he screwed so-and-so's ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, which, first of all, is like a betrayal of the core idea of a social experiment that these things are supposed to stand for, but it's also like a betrayal of humanity. Like, to put people into a room together and to see them actually, working together and forming a coalition and getting along and building things in a positive direction, and then to, like, intentionally sabotage that for some kind of voyeuristic entertainment factor is just like, it's a betrayal of life.
Yeah.
Again, this is all fascinating. This idea that so many different people from all walks of life could so easily mesh together in what is a pretty absurd experiment. That is the data. And it's good, right? Especially today. It's so wonderful to see folks just doing the damn thing, happily and joyfully. However, this was not the data Santiago wanted. Worse, it actively disproved his hypothesis. He had expected some primal descent into madness, a hot-blooded mutiny triggered by jealousy, horniness, or power. Instead, he got a floating community that operated on mutual respect. Not perfectly, there were still disagreements, personality clashes, and moments of tedium, but nothing close to the fireworks he needed to justify his theories. So Santiago started pushing, which is so funny because, I mean, just going back to this thing we keep saying, like, it's so funny and also so tragic and unfortunate, but like, in this experiment, he succeeded, right? He tested a hypothesis. Granted, he had sort of like an assumption, but he tested a hypothesis and he got a really fascinating result, which is, even in the face of all forces,
Mother Nature
conspiring to turn you against each other and to create violence and conflict, you still work together and successfully created a coalition of people. It was a success. But like, he was not fundamentally actually motivated by doing a real experiment. He was just like a sadist who kind of wanted to get his dick sucked. So he saw it as a failure, and then he started manipulating the results and pushing. But it's like, this is like a genuinely cool result that you've gotten, and you just don't realize it because you're a fucking asshole. He asked the women increasingly inappropriate questions under the guise of research. How often did they masturbate? Were they attracted to any of the men on board? Did they feel sexually frustrated? He turned the Raft's daily debriefs into sexual roundtables. He asked the men to rank the women in order of attractiveness. He inserted himself into private conversations and asked follow-up questions no one wanted to answer. He became the sexual HR department of the Raft, and no one had filed an application. But it didn't work. The women began to shut him down, brushing off his questions or laughing them off with practiced annoyance. The men, sensing the social temperature drop, humored him with vague, non-committal responses. Everyone started to see Santiago not as a leader or a scientist, but as kind of a middle-aged chaperone desperately trying to manufacture drama that just wasn't there. He was, for all intents and purposes, at this moment, a provocateur. He wanted the drama. He needed them to argue and devolve because that was his expectation, his hypothesis. Most telling, it seemed like it was his truth. People often expect what they themselves would do to be reflected in others. If you're the type of guy who assumes no guy wants a woman in charge, it's because you're the type of guy who doesn't want a woman in charge. Santiago assumed the worst in people, maybe because he was the worst. Eventually, in a move that reads like something from a rejected Seinfeld plot, Santiago suggested that he should have sex with someone, for science. He framed it as kind of a sacrificial data gathering exercise. He's like, they're out there on this boat and he's trying to get all these things to happen, and he's like, please everybody fuck. Please fuck. He's like Jeb Bush.
Please clap.
Please fuck.
Please clap. Please clap.
And he's doing all these things to try to manufacture it, and it's like not working. And eventually he's just like, all right, I'm just going for broke here. Team meeting, everybody. Nobody's less excited about this than me. This is not what I wanted. This is not something that I wanted to happen. It's very unfortunate, but I've crunched the numbers. I've done the research. For the sake of this experiment, I have to fuck one of you. I'm sorry. I don't want this.
I don't want this.
I don't
want this. Somebody, we've just got to fuck. If we don't fuck, it all might be for naught.
Yeah.
Santiago, why? Why would it be for naught? Because it's called the sex raft experiment. If there's no sex on the sex raft, then
it's just the raft experiment?
It's just the raft experiment.
What is that?
That doesn't work. That sucks.
The fucking sunshine and hugs raft?
That sucks. The fucking everybody being chill raft? I don't think so.
The fucking shitting off the edge of the boat and then sleeping raft?
What did we all shit into the water for if not for one of you to fuck me?
Yeah, every shit you took off the side of this boat was for nothing if you don't fuck me right now.
Yeah, I feel like we really gotta We got to get to the fuck.
Yeah, but it's just so funny that he's just like, I ran the numbers and we have to have sex. It's for science. And everybody was just like, no?
No? I don't think so.
It's so funny to see like the weight of a man's arrogance just crush him, where like he just thought like he saw himself as a sort of almost cult-like charismatic 1970s science guy, researcher dude, genius. He saw himself as like a Timothy Leary type person, where all these people were going to think that he was so smart that they would just kind of follow him off any cliff. And he's just like, yeah, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be the genius and everybody's going to look up to me and do all these different things. And then he goes out there and they're all just like, this guy sucks.
Yeah, this guy
you're
is
a little
not cool.
You're a little weasel.
Yeah.
Like just all of his like ambitions and self-aggrandizing ideas of himself as like this genius leader of science or whatever just fell completely flat whenever he was actually stuck in a room with people and they could see all of the crevices and cracks of his shittiness.
Santiago, if I may, I have a question. Yeah, so if you don't want to call it the sex raft, maybe call it the sex pest raft, because that's what you're doing right now.
Yeah. You're going full James Franco on us on this boat.
Yeah, we don't want to get Franco'd, okay? Because you suck, man.
But once again, go back to what you said before. You love to see it.
Yeah.
Because you don't always see it.
No.
But when you see it, you love to see it.
You love to see it. Yeah.
You love to see a weaselly little bullshit man get called out for being a weaselly little bullshit man.
100%. Fuck this guy.
Because it doesn't always happen that way.
Tragically.
I mean, you're still going strong.
Yeah, but that's because I'm not a Weasley little man. I'm just a Weasley man.
Yeah.
There is a slight difference.
You're big for a weasel.
I know, right? Yeah. I've been working out.
Have you?
Of course not. Of course not. No.
I can't imagine you working out, but then again, I could never in a million years have imagined you cooking. So apparently you contain multitudes.
Yeah, I love to cook. Yeah.
You gaslit me into thinking that you were somebody who like has never turned on an oven.
What? Since when?
That's
I said this?
That's the thing. That's the vibe that you have given since day one. So when you were like, yeah, I was in the fucking great British baking show.
Yeah.
I was just like, what?
Yeah, when I lived in France, I did all the cooking. Yeah. The
Yeah,
whole time,
I was just like, huh?
Yeah, I like to cook. It's fun. It's relaxing. Yeah. I remember Sophie Campbell once told me that
I like how you're acting like so like incredulous about it, when in reality, like you intentionally were like trolling me and making me think that.
I did?
I think so. I think you get some kind of weird satisfaction out of like making me think something is a certain way and then just like surprise
years later rug pulling you.
Yeah, rug pulling it.
I'm not gonna say that's not true. I'm sure there's stuff that I've done that of like with you. Yeah, sure. But I just didn't know that this was one of them. I guess I was doing it subconsciously. But I would say that's actually
like I have another friend who does a similar thing that it reminds me of that you do. Like you two have this in common,
okay.
Where he loves to like do weird rug pulls on me for no reason whatsoever. He finds it hilarious.
Yeah.
And he'll like build them up over like long periods of time.
Yeah.
Like we worked together for years and he's just like, it was an established fact about him that he doesn't drink coffee and he drinks tea. And it was like a thing. It was a joke. It was like a running gag that everybody was like, because he would have like crates of tea in his office, and like they would be ordered, and he'd have this tea in his office, and it was this specific brand, and everybody made fun of him about it, and he was like a big tea guy or whatever, and the whole thing was that he didn't drink coffee and he loved drinking tea. And then one day we were hanging out, we went to a coffee shop, and then he just ordered a coffee, and it was like his prestige. Like he thought it was so funny that he pretended like he didn't drink coffee for like 5 years, and then just casually ordered coffee in front of me. Like he just, it was hilarious to him.
I don't know if I have that level of dedication to it, but maybe I do. I don't know.
I'm the perfect mark for it because, like, when somebody does that to me, I'm just like, it glitches out my programming of like, this is the way that my world is. This is the objective truth of the universe. What do you mean it's not that?
Yeah. Yeah, it might be something to look into. Might be the reason that these people do that. These really smart, hilarious, good-looking people.
I'm never getting on a sex raft with you.
I mean, I feel like that's what this show is. Is this show not a sex raft for just the two of us?
Yeah. It would be if we had gotten that third member of it, like we originally kind of talked about doing.
Oh, yeah.
That you convinced me not to do.
Yeah.
It would have been a sex raft.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, you would have fucking killed that guy.
I was gonna say I don't think we would have. It would have been. I think it would have been a murder raft. Yeah, I think it would have been a fucking murder raft.
Yeah, yeah. It would have 100% been a murder raft. At this point, Santiago began to isolate himself. He stopped joining the group for meals. He muttered about how they were deliberately resisting the experiment. He took to journaling obsessively and sitting alone in the corner of the raft, brooding while others passed around a guitar. He was like a little emo bitch.
It's so funny that he was just like, so who wants to suck my dong? And everyone was like, nah, I'm good. And he was like, well, I'm fine. I didn't want it anyway.
He's the OG incel.
Dude, he really is. This guy sucks.
He was all of us in high school.
I don't know that I was, I'm not saying I was perfect, but I don't know that I was that guy. I don't know that I was, well, I'm fine. Like that, this level of
sure?
like.
Are you sure?
I could be wrong. Maybe some people perceive me that way, but that's not what my lived experience was.
I mean, I think to a certain degree, we all are. We all are, and as like technology progresses and we become more and more constantly on camera, the turnaround time of that becomes shorter and shorter. Like I looked at a couple drafts of TikTok videos that I made like 6 months ago, and I was just like, I sound like a fucking asshole.
Not many people know that.
Like it used to be a thing. Well, this was back. I used to make videos that were a little bit more just me being opinionated about things. Like now I just do like fact explainer videos because it's not fun to just intentionally post hot takes because you're trying to get people to disagree with you, and then you get like 1,000 people just calling you every name in the book and scrutinizing every aspect of your personality and physical appearance. Like it's not fun to do. So I've shifted away from that, and now I make just fact-based videos that aren't about me or my opinion about things. But I have some drafts from whenever I kind of did that a little bit more, and I'm just like, I sound like a fucking asshole. And it used to be that it was just like you would look back on things you said like 5 years ago,
right? And
you felt that way. But now it's like you're reminded of things you said like a week ago, and you're just like, ugh. It became clear to everyone this wasn't about peace. This wasn't about understanding conflict. This was about Santiago's strange holdups and kinks. His own ideas about how people should act, and his increasing frustration that no one else wanted to play along. And with that realization, the dynamic shifted. The crew stopped seeing themselves as subjects of a noble scientific mission. They saw the experiment for what it really was, a poorly disguised attempt at intellectual voyeurism, orchestrated by a man unraveling under the weight of his own expectations. Speaking of a man unraveling under the weight of his own expectations, do you have anything to plug, Dave?
Am I unraveling under my expectations or under your expectations? I think it's your expectations that I'm failing to meet, no?
You said it, not me.
I mean, I never said that they were warranted or well thought out expectations, but expectations nonetheless. No, I'm good. Spandrew, where can people find you on the internet? I just get up and leave. I've totally lost the thread. We're promoting stuff. Mary Tyler Moore Hawk's book I made. I don't know. It's pretty cool. What do you want to promote?
Well, you maybe can follow us on social media if this show isn't deleted in a week by going to Facebook and searching Deep Cuts Podcast. You can join our Facebook group, the Deep Cuts Podcast Facebook group, where we talk about the show, we make memes, we do other fun stuff on there. We also have a Discord server, bit.ly.com/deepcutsdiscord, where we talk about the show, we make memes, we play games, we hang out. You can follow us on Instagram at Deep Cuts Pod. You can follow us on TikTok at Mystery Treehouse. You can follow me on TikTok at Treehouse Detective, where I make cool explainer videos and fun fact videos and all kinds of stuff. Kind of a mini version of the show that's just me. So, 50% less bitchiness. We're just turning into Siskel and Ebert.
Siskel and Ebert? Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah.
And you can also subscribe to my Substack, where I do longer form written content, substack.treehousedetective.com. I actually just published an article, which is I basically elaborately broke down the weirdest episode of a TV show that I've ever watched in my entire life, which is an episode of this anthology show called Amazing Stories that was created by Steven Spielberg in 1985. And there's an episode of it called Gather Ye Acorns, which is about Mark Hamill basically being a homeless vagabond because a tiny little forest gnome told him to never get a job. And it's just like tracking him through his entire life from the 1930s to the 1980s, and just how like never getting a job affects him. And then it has one of the weirdest twist endings of anything I've ever seen in my entire life. And I basically wrote an oral history of it. That's just an article I just published, and I think it's very funny. So you can check that out. Also, a little bit of past podcast news. Little late to the game. I meant to talk about this on the show prior to the Kickstarter ending, but we ended up being a little late on it, and now you're going to see this possibly months after this happened, depending on when we publish this episode. But just as sharing a little bit of good news, so past subject of the show, Dan O'Neill, who was, if you listen to the Disney versus the Air Pirates episode, he was a comic artist, or he is a comic artist that had a comic strip in the San Francisco Chronicle in the 1960s called Odd Bodkins. It was a political strip, and famously in the 1970s he went to court against Disney because him and a handful of other underground comics artists created a bunch of pornographic Disney comics where Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse and Goofy were basically doing what Santiago wanted to do with these people on this raft. And they got sued by Disney, and it became this big battle for essentially free speech and the right to parody and fair use and all these things like that. We did a whole episode about it. Recently, some friends of mine launched a Kickstarter to create a documentary about Dan O'Neill and the Air Pirates. And they were asking for 51 grand, and the Kickstarter ran, and they made it. So there's gonna be a documentary with a bunch of new interviews with Dan O'Neill and some of the other comic artists that are still living. It's a documentary that's essentially just covering the story that we talked about on that episode, except for there's gonna be some additional interviews with Dan O'Neill and some of the other artists. It got funded. So
that's great.
They're gonna make it. So congrats.
Yes, congratulations.
And we'll
and also, can we be in the documentary as Mickey and Minnie in costume? Is that how we squash this beef from this episode? Is just
by fucking in furry costumes? Yes.
I think that sounds pretty on par for us. Let's not say it with the disparaging tone in our voice, Andrew. Let's call it like it is.
Absolutely.
And say
that's how we can. That's how we can squash it.
That's a normal Tuesday for us.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Actually, it's funny. So I made a video about Dan O'Neill on TikTok because they were doing this Kickstarter and I kind of wanted to help them out. So I made a video talking about it and I plugged the Kickstarter, but it was like an explainer video that kind of summarized what our episode was about. And then I plugged the Kickstarter at the end, and the video did very well. And it, I think, introduced Dan O'Neill and this story to a lot of younger people.
Cool.
But the funny thing about it is it's funny to see people's interpretations of things that are not in your sort of like sphere of culture. So, you know, people that are on TikTok or younger people or whatever you want to say the demographic was, it was really funny to see that their reaction to it was pretty overwhelmingly that Dan O'Neill was the OG furry.
That's great.
Which is not any way that I ever thought about or framed that story.
Yeah.
But I see what they're saying.
Yeah. They're not wrong, but also that's not how I read that at all either. But I love that. That's a great take.
I introduced Dan O'Neill to a new generation, and they all saw him as a furry king.
My question is, do you think now there's a bunch of furries that are following you wanting more furry content?
That already happened because I did a comic with a friend of the show, Brandon Nebbit. We did a comic together. Once again, not any way that I ever thought about or framed it, but we made a comic that was basically a throwback parody / homage / pastiche of the sort of like 1980s ephemera of Ninja Turtles ripoffs. So it was like, what if we were in the 1980s and we wanted to cash in on the Ninja Turtles craze, and we made our version of Biker Mice from Mars or Cowboys of Moo Mesa. And so we made a comic that was basically like G.I. Joe meets Ninja Turtles about these anthropomorphic dog soldiers. And I made a video about it and showed off some of the artwork, and everybody was like, this is furry porn. And I was just, that was not the way that I thought about it. I thought it was a Ninja Turtles throwback. But everybody on the internet was like, the video did well and it got a lot of views, but everybody was like, you guys are furries.
I mean, apparently everybody that was alive for that anthropomorphic boom is a furry, because I love that shit.
Yeah. I mean, that's
time beavers, dinosaurs for hire.
Well, here's the thing. If liking like talking animal guys makes you a furry, then like get me the suit, take me to the con, because I love talking animal comics. I love anthropomorphic animal cartoons.
Yep.
We're right off camera over there. You can see a McGruff the Crime Dog costume.
Yep.
I have an actual original McGruff the Crime Dog suit from the 1980s. I'm all if it's an animal wearing clothes and talking, I'm there. So that makes me a furry. Then like fucking.
I think it might
cuff me.
I think it might. I think we both did. We just come out.
Maybe.
Are we both?
The next episode, we're going to be in our fursonas.
Dude, are you a dog, or are they just dogs and cats? Or no, is it?
I think it's like whatever. It's like dogs, cats, wolves. I think it's mostly
canines?
Like canines.
And felines?
I don't think I've ever seen like pigs or something.
Yeah. Maybe we should start that.
Yeah, pig furries.
Dude, can we be pig bros?
We could be pig bros. Yeah.
Sick.
But yeah. I think it's mostly canines, but like, you know, we could experiment.
I'm game to experiment with you. Great. Glad we got to the bottom of that.
But yeah, they're making a documentary, and you know, when it comes out, I'll probably mention it again and say go check it out.
Yeah.
It'll probably be on some kind of streaming service somewhere.
I hope it's on Tubi. I love Tubi.
Yeah.
Tubi, sponsor us,
we'll
motherfuckers.
Yeah. Let's get Tubi. Let us help you.
Yeah.
Let us help you. Our audience is the Tubi audience.
I just watched a great documentary on Tubi called Carts of Darkness about a homeless encampment of guys who ride stolen grocery store carts down this crazy steep hill and almost die repeatedly, and like it's the only thing they live for, and they go to prison for it, and they get out and they start doing it again. It's great. It's called Carts of Darkness on Tubi.
Check it out. I just rewatched The Evil Within on Tubi.
Oh,
because
I love that movie.
One of the OG episodes of the show.
Yeah.
Episode 3 or something like that.
I saw you made a video about it.
I made a video about it, and
Yeah.
so I refreshed my memory.
Right,
And so
yeah.
I watched it, and it's on Tubi. And now, back to the show. Act 2, Mutiny on the Loveboat. Santiago, now rejected as both researcher and potential lover, did not take his relevance lightly. Rather than accept that his grand theory was being dismantled by the very people he'd selected to prove it, he doubled down. If the experiment wouldn't break down on its own, he would break it himself. He started sowing discord. In private, he would approach crew members and whisper that others had been talking behind their backs. He told one woman that another had called her manipulative. He told one of the men that the captain thought he was lazy. When asked for sources, he'd smile and say, "It's in the anonymous surveys." Then he'd read those surveys aloud during group meetings, carefully highlighting anything that could be twisted into a slight. He turned into like a trickster spirit. He became like the Loki.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's Loki of the sex raft.
Yeah. He's like whispering things into people's ears, crossing streams, telling this person one thing, telling this person another thing. Like, if anything, at the end of the day, what this experiment is like observing what happens when you put like a sociopath. It's like Among Us. It's
really? The guy who came up with the sex raft is a sociopath? I never would have guessed.
It's like what happens when you start getting real and you put a crazy asshole on a boat with 5 normal people and just see him have a meltdown. This is the sex raft.
Welcome to Sex Raft. On today's episode, we're going to see this guy totally Napoleon complex himself.
Yeah, it's funny that he wanted to do a certain thing and then ended up creating an entirely different experiment, which is the observation of in-group, out-group dynamics where you have like a team of strongly connected people who form a coalition, and then there's like one bad actor who's like operating outside of the barriers of this connection because he has diverged ideologically from them, and then his attempt to like sabotage and destroy that coalition out of jealousy and isolation. Like, he created an entirely different experiment that's actually way more fascinating than what he was trying to do.
Yeah, but also so much more inept and hilarious in his striving to control the situation and be a master manipulator. And the way that he manipulates people is just being like, someone thinks you're not very nice.
Yeah, just being a little bitch.
Yeah. Something I would know something about.
Yeah. This is what you'd be doing.
That is what I'd be doing. Who says I'm not doing it
Whispering
right now?
It, yeah.
That's what
it's like you against. It's like me. You're like whispering in my ear to me about you.
Well, you see, the thing you're not looking here.
You're like, he's not listening to your fucking episodes.
The thing that you're overlooking here is the fact that I've been conducting my own experiment, and it's called the Sex Garage.
It's funny you say that, because that is the nickname for this.
The Sex Garage is what you call this place we record?
No.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah, this is where your third child was conceived.
Yeah. That shelf. Some great memories in the 2010s.
She's like fucking 2 years old. I love it.
He was trying to break the raft from within, emotionally waterboard them into conflict. But instead of igniting paranoia, his efforts came across as petty, obvious, and weird. The crew realized what he was doing almost immediately. They began referring to him not as the scientist, but as the problem. And so, quietly, a mutiny began. The crew started holding secret meetings, no easy task on a 12-meter raft where every conversation could be overheard. They coordinated using glances and vague cues. Some suggested throwing his notebooks overboard. Others joked about strapping him to the latrine and pushing him out to sea. The jokes got darker as the days went on, but the intent was clear. Santiago was no longer in charge or even respected in the slightest. They had essentially formed a union, a floating, sunburned, multilingual alliance of please shut the hell up. We're not to the end yet, but this experiment and kind of what I was talking about before of like what the experiment actually ended up becoming. This belongs in a larger canon, and this is an episode that we haven't done yet. So this is kind of like foreshadowing. This is an episode that is in the pipeline. Or maybe it's come out already. Maybe we recorded it and it got published first. But there's an episode we're going to do about the fact that the famous Stanford prison experiment has essentially been discovered to have been a hoax, where, to summarize, I don't want to ruin the episode that we're going to actually do about it. It was an experiment that was meant to show like how power dynamics affect people's behaviors
in prisons.
They gave certain people certain authorities, and that caused them to inherently oppress and subjugate other people based on the dynamic of having power versus being submissive. And it's basically been discovered that the whole thing was staged and that they were just actors, and the people who were conducting the experiment were basically coaching them on like, act like you're beating this person and pretend like you're fucking going mad with power or whatever. And there's this fact that like the idea that like power corrupts, at least within the microcosm of that experiment, was sort of a staged, orchestrated thesis. And that coupled with other examples where power and authority do corrupt, or they give the illusion that they corrupt, where it's like, okay, you can look at it and it's like, oh, yeah, whenever people are given positions of authorities, they inherently abuse them. But it's like, is that true? Or is it the type of person who wants to become a cop is inherently just a fucking asshole who wants to hurt people?
Yeah.
And then the other stuff we were talking about with like people like Andrew Tate or whatever, these like, social media influencers that are all about the dynamics of power and control. You put all these pieces together and you start to see this mosaic of like, actually when people get put together and forced to work together, they actually are functional and they work well together and they form coalitions and they build things in a positive direction. And it's specifically shitty bad actors who come in and like throw wrecking balls at those dynamics. This isn't like, oh, power corrupts people and people are inherently corruptible. It's like people work together and want to work together and want to form positive coalitions. And then there's just like shitty outsiders who want to come in and destroy that because they're not the center of it. I'm just seeing this pattern coming from all these different pieces.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone's ever, I mean, I'm sure they have, but haven't heard anyone speak about these things in that context and make this observation that maybe it's not power that corrupts. Maybe the type of person that seeks power is inherently the worst type of person to give power.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true, but also I think power corrupts. I think both things can be true, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, power absolutely can corrupt, but I think that maybe the thesis, at least within the scope of these experiments, that like power inevitably corrupts and that like all people would inevitably be oppressive, shitty tyrants is not necessarily true. It's you're projecting your own shittiness onto humanity.
Sure.
The women who were meant to be pawns in Santiago's sexual Cold War were the first to take control. They began shielding each other from his questions. They supported the younger participants when he cornered them. They refused to answer any personal inquiries and called him out during group meetings. The men, once relegated to grunt work, followed their lead. They deferred to the women's decisions, helped enforce boundaries, and refused to engage in Santiago's passive-aggressive games. From that point on, he was fully sidelined. Nobody took his surveys, nobody joined his observation sessions. They stopped laughing at his jokes. They started eating meals without him. He was a ghost on his own vessel, drifting into the social periphery like a rejected Big Brother contestant. By the final weeks, Santiago was left scribbling notes to himself and muttering about uncooperative subjects. He tried to reframe the data to salvage something meaningful, writing that the lack of conflict was itself a form of resistance, or that the group's unity masked deeper tensions. But the truth was harder to face. The experiment failed because people didn't need his manipulation to survive in close quarters. They just needed to not be treated like lab rats in a floating sex dungeon, which simultaneously is a horrible thing to try to push people into, but also a fucking badass metal album title.
Yeah, it is.
Lab rats in a floating sex dungeon.
I think maybe next time we make episodes that have some music in it, maybe we could do something with that.
Lab rats in a floating sex dungeon.
Come on, baby, make me squeal, make me squeak. Come on, baby, give me cheese all up in my cheeks.
Yes. Which is simultaneously very good, but also just a very confusing metaphor, because it's like the cheese in the cheeks of, like, storing cheese in your cheeks, which rats don't do that.
Yeah.
It's squirrels that do that, but like, I'll follow you. But then the cheeks are the butt cheeks though. Like it's like it's a confusing metaphor.
Who's to say? I never said they were butt cheeks. You said this. I'm just making. I'm just a goof.
Yeah, I guess I guess the cheese could go into the
Yeah.
cheeks of the mouth. Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
I feel like the record cover would be one of those stereotypical like 80s hair metal covers where it's like a woman's legs and you're looking through her legs and there's like something in between them compositionally, and it would be like you and me as rats like staring up at her through the legs.
Yeah, with like holding giant, like cartoonishly large wedges of cheese.
Yeah, and we're on a raft out at sea and the sun is setting behind us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Floating sex dungeon by the sex rats.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is
the greatest idea we've ever had. This is the greatest idea we've ever
sex rats, floating sex dungeon. The only drama left on the raft? Petty squabbles about sunscreen and whether there was enough peanut butter to make it to shore. The rest of the crew had long since moved on from Santiago. The only person still stuck in the experiment was him. When the Acali raft finally reached Mexico after 101 days at sea, there was no triumphant scientific revelation. There was no shocking behavioral data, no profound sociological insight that could justify the time, risk, or funding. What there was, perhaps most surprisingly, was genuine friendship. The crew disembarked not as traumatized lab rats, but as a tight-knit, battle-tested family. They were suntanned, salt-crusted, exhausted, and profoundly done with Santiago.
See, this is like fucking insane to me that this guy was like, okay, we're gonna go out to a really secluded location where no one can interfere, but then we're not gonna have showers, and we're not gonna have soap, and we're not gonna have like beds and like comfortable environments to fuck in. We're gonna like fuck on a raft in the middle of the ocean getting sunburned the whole time. Like, that sounds horrible.
Yeah, it's the ultimate like externalization of like thinking something is gonna be like really good because you're just like, it's a little kinky, it's a little sexy, and then you actually do it and you're just like, this fucking sucks. I overestimated how fun this would be.
Yeah. Beach sex or whatever.
Yeah, you don't think of the logistics, like, ooh, beach sex.
Yeah.
Sex on the beach, and then you're just like,
there's
sand all up in my
everywhere.
shit.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
You go from fucking Quentin Tarantino to Anakin Skywalker in 3 seconds flat.
That's yeah. I hate sand. It's coarse and it gets everywhere, and it overrides my rampant foot fetish. Asterisk. This is a callback to earlier when we made foot fetish jokes.
Yep, it is.
Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, that's cool.
To the end, Santiago tried to spin the experiment as a success. He declared that the lack of conflict was kind of conflict in disguise. He thought the very fact that the crew banded together against him proved his point about competition and tribalism. He wrote a book called The Acali Experiment, a study in human aggression, which contained long philosophical stretches about mankind's violent nature and the hidden psychosexual motivations behind every social interaction. This is a very big example of the way that, like, once again, almost like a precursor to modern society, the way that like people can take any study and like spin it to mean anything that they want. Or frequently you'll hear people saying like, did you know that this thing is this way? And then it's based on a study that actually says the opposite of what they're claiming, but it's because you can spin anything in any direction and weaponize data to whatever ends you want it to be. Like the idea that like he wrote a book that just claimed the direct opposite of like everything that happened in the actual experiment.
He's like, no dicks were sucked, but also everything in this experiment was about dick sucking. And you're like, I don't think it is. I think it's about everyone not wanting to suck your dick.
No, listen, the reason why nobody fucked me on this raft, on this sex raft, not because I was morally, physically, and existentially repugnant to all of them. It's not because the mere sight of me disgusted every single human being I ever interacted with for the 101 days to their very core. It's because they were rebelling because of the fundamental violent nature of man.
Exactly.
In the end, it wasn't me who was unfuckable. It was man.
It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. It really does feel like that proto-incel logic of like, I remember watching an incel documentary a couple months ago where there's literally there's a sequence where one of the incel guys is like, you know, I've tried to fuck women. I've talked to ugly women and dumb women and fat women.
You're explaining exactly why.
Yeah. And he's like, and I none of them want to fuck me, and it's not my problem, it's their problem. And you're just like, look at the way you're talking. Who in the fucking their right mind?
This is a synexichy for the fact that you probably are a miserable human being that nobody enjoys interacting with.
Yeah. Like, it's not rocket science. Like, you suck. Like, be nice, be kind, be empathetic, treat people as people, not a hole to fuck.
Yeah.
It's so weird. It's so fucking weird. And I'm not saying that I've always been perfect. I was a teenage boy. I was mopey.
You fucked many holes.
I fucked so many holes. I fucked your holes. You fucked my holes. That's why you have a fucking child that looks exactly like me.
Yeah.
It's weird.
That was a weird month.
That was a weird month. I just mean, like, look, I'm not...
We call that the junior month.
The junior month, right, yeah, of course. I just mean that, look, I'm not saying I'm perfect. Everybody has rough periods, times where they're trying to grow, times they're trying to figure it out, times when they're up, when they're down, whatever. But if you're approaching these situations with that type of toxic mentality, what outcome do you really fucking expect you're going to have? And that's, like, everything that this guy stood for is
it's exactly just the whole experiment is that where if he didn't get the result he wanted, and so he just like forced it to be the thing that he wanted it to be, which is not a scientific experiment.
No,
it's just a confirmation bias on a boat.
Yeah, totally. And also just like making everybody uncomfortable, like trying, and purposefully so, trying to sow conflict because he thinks that if people are in conflict, then their salt-encrusted, sweaty-ass, smelly bodies are going to start fucking. Like, what?
Yeah, he has a very childlike, insular idea of how people think and behave, where he thinks he has like this weird childish fantasy about this trope from like sitcoms or movies from the 1940s or something like that, where you get into a heated argument with, you know, two women and they're screaming at each other and like, I hate you, you're the worst, I can't believe that I would ever have met you because you're so repugnant to me, kiss me. Ugh. Like that's totally his idea of how human behavior is.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I mean, there's something to be said about sometimes you have combative dynamics of people that are
whatever,
but for the most part, if you hate somebody, it's because you hate them, not because you secretly want to fuck them. But and then also on top of that, it's like he's projecting his viewpoint of the world on everybody else and thinking like, everybody's just constantly obsessed with sexual competition, and all men, their interactions with other men are predicated on competing for partners, and it's like, no, I do not do. I literally, even whenever I'm single, even when I've been single, I've never once looked at another person and thought about them in the context of being like a rival or like a sexual competitor. But the scientific community wasn't buying it. His methodology was at best deeply flawed. At worst, it was an elaborate excuse to play out a series of power fantasies under the guise of science. The whole premise had been based on conjecture with almost no ethical oversight. Peer reviewers criticized the lack of measurable variables, the coercive social dynamics, and his overt interference in the experiment. He had become the story, and not in the good way. It was an early precursor to something like Morgan Spurlock's Supersize Me, an experiment more tantalizing and hook-based than something built on data and thorough vetting. You could make the argument, though, that at least Spurlock was trying to draw attention to larger issues around health and sustainability, which your mileage may vary on that argument, but you could make it. With Santiago, though, there isn't even that, just direct evidence to the contrary of everything he posited. Because, even worse for Santiago, the participants publicly disagreed with his conclusions. They didn't see their experience as proof of some deep evolutionary war between the sexes. They saw it as an exercise in forced community, one where trust, humor, and cooperation triumphed over manipulation. They described Santiago as paranoid, obsessive, and manipulative. Many of them said the real stress of the trip wasn't the ocean or the raft or even each other, it was him. Decades later, Swedish filmmaker Marcus Lindeen brought the Acali crew back together for the 2018 documentary The Raft. The film is part archival footage, part reenactment, and part filmed reunion. In a lovingly recreated replica of the raft, the surviving members sat down together, now older, wiser, and far more stylish, and processed what happened to them. The documentary is a beautifully weird experience. At times, it feels like group therapy. At others, like a surreal reality show confessional. The participants laughed about Santiago's absurdity, cried about the emotional toll, and marveled at the sheer weirdness of it all. But one thing is unanimous. Santiago Genoves was the problem. And there's something darkly poetic about that. Santiago wanted proof that human beings were inherently conflict-driven. He wanted sex and jealousy and chaos. Instead, he got 11 people who supported one another, resisted manipulation, and came out the other side better for it, by uniting against the manipulative force at the center. He didn't prove that sex causes conflict. He proved that creepy, authoritarian micromanagement causes conflict. And that when you treat people like variables instead of human beings, the only experiment you'll end up running is one in your own humiliation.
Fuck this dude. Fuck this dude.
And on top of everything that we've discussed this entire time, another thing that it just kind of occurred to me is that, once again, it does create the template for reality TV show and modern voyeurism. But it's like, it's that, but there was one variable of it that Santiago got wrong that people figured out, which is you can't manufacture drama and conflict by getting a bunch of people together who are inherently, like, what he was trying to do was taking a bunch of normal people and show that through unending close quarters contact and all these manipulated acts of sabotage, you could drive them to conflict and drama and violence and backstabbing and conniving and all this stuff like that. And the one variable of that needed to be traded out is that you have to pick people who inherently want attention and want to, perform in front of an audience and want to be famous, basically.
Yeah.
And then the equation is completed, the circuit is completed, and then you do get the conflict and the drama and the violence and all that stuff like that. And then that's what reality TV show is. It's this experiment, but instead of choosing 5 normal people, they choose 5 self-obsessed maniacs.
Yeah. I also think that this story is compelling because the story is called The Sex Raft, and there is no sex. And that's very funny to me. It's very funny to me.
Yeah, it's the biggest Chekhov's gun failure of all time.
Yeah. It's really silly. And I love that. I love that you would go into a story being like, welcome to the fuck dungeon. And it's just like people watching the 2006 Speed Racer movie and eating popcorn for 2 hours, you know?
I mean, if it was us, that would turn into the fuck dungeon.
Yeah, absolutely it would. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think this story is fascinating. I think it's really funny that everybody was able to recognize the toxicity at play. I love the fact that they banded together because, let's be real, a lot of the stories we cover don't have happy endings, and when they do, there's an immense amount of sacrifice that has to happen for that to manifest. And the fact that this story is just like an incredibly insane setup and then a solution just like steeped in mundanity, which is why it's so great. Like I love that.
Yeah, it's like a failure on every level to manufacture human drama and create the sort of like larger than life theatrics that makes something entertaining, but that in and of itself makes it very entertaining.
Yeah,
because it's just so funny.
Well, it's because
that he tried everything he could to like make it fucked up, and it just refused to be fucked up.
Because you can feel the force on one side of it being like conflict, anger, violence, sex, be terrible to one another, and on the other side it's just like a group of people choosing to be good.
Yeah,
like that's amazing. I love it.
Once again, it can all be summed up by you love to see it.
You love to see it. Well, on that note, I'm Dave Baker.
And I'm Andrew Price.
This has been Deep Cuts. You can find me on the internet at heydavebaker.com and my book, Mary Tyler Moorhawk, wherever books are sold. Andrew, where can people find you on the internet?
You can get my book, Deadbolt AI Private Eye, by going to dapricewrites.com. It's a comic about a robot in the future solving crimes and dealing with existential ennui. You can also follow us on social media by going to Facebook and searching Deep Cuts Podcast. You can join our Facebook group, the Deep Cuts Podcast Facebook group, where we talk about the show, we make memes, we do other fun stuff. It's a cool little community. You can also join our Discord server, bit.ly.com/DeepCutsDiscord, where we talk about the show, we make memes, we play games, we do other fun stuff. It's another little cool community. You can follow us on Instagram at Deep Cuts Pod. You can follow us on TikTok at Mystery Treehouse. You can go to our shop on deepcutspod.com, click on the shop, buy hats, shirts, t-shirts, onesies, coffee mugs, all kinds of stuff, fanny packs with Deep Cuts graphics on them. You can also follow me on TikTok at Treehouse Detective, where I make cool little explainer videos and factoids and fun little videos like that. And you can check out my Substack, where I do longer, in-depth writing at substack.treehousedetective.com.